Good afternoon, guys. We are really excited to come here and share some information with you. This is Mrs. Kelly from Lott Middle School, and I am Mrs. Carbo from North Mobile Pre-K through 8. And, we know that things have been very different than they've ever been before. And, this is our opportunity and a time for us to be able to come and talk with you guys and just kind of connect. Today, we're going to talk about conflict resolution, because we know that that's something that everybody is dealing with. And I can imagine being at home with your siblings for such an extended period of time is probably been kind of difficult, and not having other friends to play with. And so we just want to kind of address some things that might help you be able to manage that here at home. So we're going to look at some slides today and kind of, again, give you guys some coping skills that might help in this area.
And as Ms. Carbo said, I'm Kimberly Kelly from Lott Middle School, bringing you greetings. Hello to my Wildcat family and to everyone that's here today. Our focus today is conflict resolution. And as she stated earlier, this is definitely a difficult time. We always deal with conflict at some point in our lives. With that being said, we want to give you some skills and just some coping skills that you can use to help resolve some of those conflicts when you do come into contact with those in your life. So let's get started.
Okay, first we're going to look at what is conflict resolution, okay? And when we're looking at that, the first thing we're going to look at is a disagreement. So conflict is something where two people are coming together and they're not agreeing on something, and instead of being able to just resolve that disagreement might get even stronger. So a disagreement is one of the definitions of conflict resolution. The second one is we want you to understand that conflict is a normal part of life. All of us have disagreements at different times, even best friends, mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, mom and grandma, all of us have disagreements at different times. And so we want you to understand that just having a disagreement is a normal part of life. And it's not always negative. Sometimes we have to look at these different areas and realize that I need to be able to share what I think, and you need to be able to share what you think. And if those things are different and they're not exactly the same, then that's okay. And what's healthy is for us to be able to come to some agreement so that we can accept each other's differences. So that's one of the things that it's a normal part of life, and it's not always negative. Another one is that our reaction determines the outcome. That's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is how can we react to conflict. We know it's a disagreement, something we are, not on the same page. We know that it's a normal part of life. We also know that it's not always negative. And now we're going to talk about how our reaction determines the outcome. So we can have a negative reaction that makes things really bad and can really escalate things, or we can have a really good reaction where we can actually grow from conflict.
Now, of course, we would like to have a positive reaction to resolving conflict. Now that we know exactly what conflict is, let's look at some of the choices that we have when we respond to those. First, there's aggressive or being mean. Intentionally doing something to hurt another person, to make them do something they do not want to do. And of course, when others act mean towards us, it's not a good feeling. So we don't want you to respond in that manner and acting mean to someone else. That is being aggressive. The second is being submissive. Going along with what someone else wants you to do, even though you don't really want to. I want you to realize that your feelings and your thoughts are important. So it's important for you to communicate your feelings and your thoughts. You don't always have to just go along with someone just because that's what they want to do. So we'll talk as we progress throughout the lesson on how you can communicate your feelings and your thoughts despite the fact that they may not line up with your friends. And lastly is being assertive. It's standing up for yourself while showing respect for other people. So it's okay to stand up and stand firm in what you believe in. And we're going to show you exactly how you can do that without escalating the situation and without it, evolving into something negative.
Okay, here are some steps for conflict resolution. First of all, stop and think. This is something that's really good for even anxiety in your life or a lot of different things, because sometimes what we do is we act and then we think later. And when that happens, it causes problems in everything we do. You guys know that even at school that can happen. And we get in trouble a lot of times when we're what we call impulsive. So if what we do is we act out and then we think about it later. And a lot of times in conflict, what we do is we react to what is happening and what someone else says. And if we do that, then it tends to escalate the situation. So for example, if someone says to me, the sky is blue, and I say, no, it's raining out. And then because we disagree, I'm like, I'm telling you that the sky is blue. You know, if we try to do something like that, then you can see how that can escalate just because we're not respecting the other person's view. So we need to stop and think, how am I going to react to this situation before we impulsively react? The second one is stay calm. And there's a couple different ways that we can do that. One is just to take a deep breath. You've heard the old adage, count to 10. So sometimes that's exactly what we have to do is stop, even close your eyes and count to 10 before we react to somebody and what is going on. And that can be a really good way to respond to the conflict. So that especially if you're getting into a conflict with your parent, rather than lashing back out at them or being disrespectful, if we can just calm down, listen to what they're having to say, and then respond to it, that can sometimes make a really big difference. The other thing is to be able to talk. A lot of times we want people to just agree with us, and we don't want to take the time to allow them to talk to us. You can't resolve a conflict if you can't express how you feel, or if you can't listen to how someone else feels. And that's the next one, is listen. So talk and listen kind of go the same way. Talking is being able to not scream at somebody about what you think or what you feel, but to be able to calmly describe your feelings and your emotions and how you feel about something. And listening means that even if you think you're right, you're able to stop, step back, and listen to what someone else has to say. And then think ahead. That's kind of like a goal planning thing. When I'm going into a conversation and I know there might be conflict, I want to really think about what the other person might be feeling and think about how I can express myself in a way that they can hear it and at the same time not overreact to what I'm saying. So that's really important to be able to think ahead. And then together, the two of you come up with solutions. How can we resolve this where both people get to have something out of it? So instead of just, you have to do it my way or I have to do it your way, how can we come to a place where we can communicate and maybe there's some give and take on both sides? And then the final one is ask for help. If you're at home, ask your parent for help. If you're at school, you can come to your counselor and ask your counselor for help, or your teacher. So those are different ways that those are steps for resolving conflict, different ways that we can resolve it. Always be willing to ask for help. If there's something that's going on that's really rough and you have to get someone else outside your family to help, then know that you have a trusted adult that you can contact to get some help from even outside the family if that conflict is something that you just cannot resolve.
So now that we've reviewed the 7 steps for resolving conflict, we want to look at some communication skills that will help you in the process of implementing those steps. So let's take a look. Reflective listening. In reflective listening, you want to restate what the other person said to make sure you understand what they are communicating. So when you all are having that dialogue and you're talking about your feelings and what's making you upset, make sure that you are actively listening to that person, and in doing so, you can repeat back their feelings. Let's look at an example. What I'm hearing you say is. So, for example, if your sister and you or your mother and you are having a disagreement and you are expressing that disagreement to one another, then perhaps you may say, so Mom, what I'm hearing you say is you don't like it when I talk back to you. That's a great example of how you can exercise active listening. Also, using I statements. I statements is taking responsibility for your own actions without blaming or attacking the other person. So, for example, you can say, when you do this, I feel like this. So when you're communicating one towards another, you're not always pointing that finger and yelling at them, and those statements aren't always negative towards them, but you take some ownership to your part in whatever the conflict is by making those I statements in there. So see how this active communication and using those I statements will help when you two are working out your differences. Be aware of your nonverbal skills. Making a grimacing face, rolling your eyes, or standing with your arms folded. You know, you can communicate a whole lot without saying anything. Your facial expressions, your body language, all of that communicates something. At some point, we've probably had someone either fold their arms at us or look at us with a mean face or roll our eyes. All of that communicates something negative to us, and it can make us feel very defensive. And our response then, in turn, becomes negative. We don't want to respond negatively when we're already in conflict with someone. The whole purpose is to try to resolve the conflict. And in resolving the conflict, using negative body language really doesn't help resolve that conflict. So we want to be aware of what our body is saying, not just what our words are saying, but what our body is saying as well. So it all goes hand in hand with the steps in resolving conflict, making sure you're calm, not just in your voice and in your language, but also in your body language. You want to make sure that you're relaxed, you're calm, you're communicating, you're looking each other in the eye, and you're taking some ownership to whatever that conflict is in order to come to a good resolution to it.
Okay, now we're going to look at some ground rules for handling conflict. So these are some things that we're going to look at that you want to make sure that you try to do these when you decide that you're going to resolve this conflict, because it can make a big difference, okay? The first thing is one person talks at a time. Now, you might have to be the one in this situation that kind of lets the other person talk first, and sometimes that's the best way to go, because then you're able to hear what they're saying, and it can actually even help you formulate what you want to say to them. So that can be a real positive, but really definitely only one person can talk at a time, because what happens when two people are talking at a time? It escalates again, right? And that's the thing that we don't want to see happen in conflict. We don't want to see things escalate to a fight, right? Okay, the second thing is no physical fighting. So we got to stand, hey, this 6 foot distance, this might really help in conflict resolution, right? Our social distancing we're doing right now, because it's kind of hard to hit somebody if you're 6 foot away from them. But either way, it's really important to make a ground rule when you start to deal with a conflict that you're not going to slap or hit or punch anyone, to keep that, or push, to keep those physical things out of the resolution, okay? And then the next one is no emotional or verbal abuse, no name calling, hurtful personal attacks, or profanity. I realize that we're asking for a lot, because I know how that is with you guys. It's very difficult for all of us, even for your mom and dad or your mom and stepdad or however it works, to not use profanity or call people names. But you know, when you're looking at your little brother or your sister and you're calling them some kind of crazy name, they're going to react back. We all know that. And so if we can do this without doing that, make that your goal. Even if somebody else calls you a name, don't call them a name back. Find a positive way to discuss whatever you're in disagreement about, so that you can help resolve that issue, okay? And then the final one is discuss only one issue at a time. You know, another thing that we tend to do in conflict is bring up everything that somebody has ever done wrong to us and try to beat them up with it in that moment of conflict. That doesn't work. Whatever issue we're dealing with right now is the issue that we need to try to resolve in this conflict resolution situation. The more things that we bring into it, the less we're likely to be able to resolve that conflict. So let's try to do these. This is talk one person at a time, no physical fighting, no name calling or profanity or emotional abuse. And then let's also discuss only one issue at a time, and let's try to do that as we're setting ground rules for handling conflict.
So as we continue with ground rules for handling conflict, remember, don't play the blame game. Use good eye contact. Look one another in the eye and be open and honest with one another with how you're feeling at that time. Take time out if needed. So if you feel like you feel yourself rising and you feel some tension, you feel some of that negative energy rising up, perhaps you need to call a timeout, take a break, and step back away from the situation, and then come back to it and try to resolve it after we have calmed down. Also, be tolerant of others' other people's ideas and opinions. Everyone's point of view can vary. It might be different. I might not agree or like the exact same things that you like, or maybe I saw the situation a little different. It's very important to understand how the other person views the situation as well. Oftentimes we've offended someone and we don't even realize how or why or where it's coming from. But when you actually sit down calmly and listen to their perspective and their point of view, you may see something now that you didn't see before. They'll reveal something to you that was offensive to them that you didn't realize was offensive. So the whole purpose in getting all of this out on the table calmly, listening to each other's point of view, is so that we can see clearly what the issue is and so that we can resolve that issue. We can get right to the root of it, right to the source of it, and understand where each other are coming from.
Okay, in summary, okay, that means, we're going to get all to the end of this and see what all we've learned, okay? All right? Okay, first of all, pay attention to your feelings. Stop and think if you're feeling angry. That means take some time. Again, like we said earlier, stop and think about how you're feeling, because it's hard to communicate how you're feeling if you're not taking the time to stop and think. Remain calm. Take some time. Take some deep breaths. You might even have to, one thing you can do is take each muscle and really squeeze your hand and then relax your hand and squeeze the other hand and relax it. And those are things that we can do to help our body calm down the same way that we're trying to get our brain to calm down. Stay in control of your emotions and behaviors. You can control how you feel. You can control what you're doing. Pay attention to the feelings the other person is expressing. It's really important to take some time and know how the other person's feeling. Because just like Ms. Kelly said, a lot of times if we can do that, it's going to help us to have compassion for them, and it'll help us back up on being so strong in what we think or what we feel. Listen to the other person. Be willing to take the time to listen to the other person and listen to what they're saying, okay? And then be tolerant of differences and accept that we all have different opinions and points of view. So, you're not going to win any battles by being so dogmatic about what you believe that you're unwilling to listen to someone else. So take the time to hear what they say and then communicate what you feel, because what you feel is very important as well. So let's make each person important in this conflict resolution, and if we can do that, it's going to make a big difference in our ability to actually come to a positive conclusion in this conflict situation.
So now that you all have some skills for resolving conflict, we want you to take this takeaway with you. I know Ms. Carbo and I both have done some conflict resolution activities with our students, and we're going to challenge you to do some of the same things as well when you have conflicts with your parents, with your siblings, with your teachers. We want to challenge you to do some of these things as well. So you can write down some of the issues that you have on little cards, and perhaps you can pull them one at a time. Remember, you only focus on one conflict at a time. So you can pull them one at a time and sit down and have that discussion. Remember to exercise what we've taught you today. Remain calm, use good eye contact, express yourself, and take some ownership to some of the things or some areas of the conversation or of the conflict that perhaps you may have played a part in. And also openly listen to one another. So if we can sit down and we can do that, then we can resolve a whole lot of conflicts and we can move forward and to a happier and healthier life. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you again next week.